Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's My Workbench, we're going to be making a belt. Now, you've seen me make belts before, but you've not seen me make this belt here. I'm actually going to be bartering with this belt. They've got something that I want, and I'm going to make something that they want, and we'll do an exchange. So today's belt is a little bit different than belts I've made in the past, and it's probably easier if I set up over here on the workbench and I'll show you what I've got going on. I appreciate you taking time to be with me in the shop today. So the belt I'm making today is going to be made in the faded golden brown. It's an 1.5 inch belt, and it's going to be made really in the style of what I refer to as the classic belt. The classic belt has stitching along both edges, but the young man that I'm making this belt for wants the stitching to be doubled around each side. So I don't know, maybe I'll just call it the double classic, but it's going to have a lot of stitching in it because I'm going to have to stitch around it twice. And it's going to have the light gray stitching. And so we'll just get started on this. And I'm not going to take you through every bit of this, but I do have a couple thoughts I want to share along the way here. So I'll get started on this, and then we'll talk a little bit here as we go. I'm going to apply 2 coats of contact adhesive to these 2 parts of the belt. Once the contact adhesive is set up, then I will laminate these 2 together, and then I'm going to create the stitching holes. And like I said earlier, this is going to be what I would call a double classic, so it's going to have 2 rows of stitching around the outside, and it's going to be a light color stitching on a medium color belt. So my stitching really needs to be spot on. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but I'm up for it. If you've been following along for a while, you know I like to make belts. And the funny thing is, I haven't made very many belts yet this year, and it's, end of March here. So I will be ramping up to make some inventory belts for some shows I've got coming up this summer, and so I'm excited about that, to get in front of people and show those. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today is probably, I guess it's been about a month and a half ago, I had a subscriber of mine send me some photos of a project that they worked on themselves, and in that video I said if there's anybody out there that has a project that they've finished that they want to show off, especially if it's something that, you know, maybe one of my videos inspired, send me the photos and I'll share them. So I'm going to break in here and I'm going to show you some pictures of knife sheaths that Jonas in Sweden made, and we'll talk a little bit about that. This first sheath is looks like a utility knife sheath with a matching belt. I think they really go well together, nice clean lines. This second sheath, there's a lot going on here. That's a complicated sheath to build. I would be, have to really think on this one, how to make that one. A spot to keep a sharpening stone and a honing steel alongside of it. Just really beautiful colors and nice work. And then this last one, it looks like the brand that I had growing up was a K-bar knife. Had a brother give that to me one year for Christmas, and I really like the design. I like the hourglass figure near the handle. Just a really nice, well thought out knife sheath. If you like these or just want to comment, that'd be nice to reach out in the comments to Jonas and let him know what you think of his work. I hope you like those knife sheaths. I think Jonas does really nice work. I like the background that he displays them in too. It's really nice. And Jonas comments on, I think every one of my videos he comments on, and I appreciate his loyalty to watching the videos that I produce, and you know, the conversation that we have back and forth as well. And anyway, I just wanted to mention that before we go on here. So I'm just about finished applying the contact adhesive. I'll let the contact adhesive set up, and then we'll laminate this together, and I'll come back here when I start putting the stitching holes in. Okay, you can see I established 2 stitch lines here.
I went ahead and created the stitching holes on the outside run, and now I'm working on the inside run. And because of the angle of the stitching iron, it can be a little bit tricky to try to just line up like this to make sure they're aligned. And if you go off the previous one, that's fine, but every once in a while you need to check and make sure that it's lined up in the right spot, because it seems like it creeps a little bit, and I'm off there, not much here, but it's only been like 3 times since I checked it last. I'm off like a 64th, and so I need to stretch it out just a little bit, and then I'll do that. Hard to do underneath the camera here. Then the next challenge, obviously, is keeping them the same distance apart from each other. And even within this stitch groove, it's easy to get some wiggle to it. And these are looking pretty good. So it does take a little bit of work to make, in my opinion, the double row here look right. But when you have stitches that are going to be predominant, they're a light gray against a medium brown, you want them lined up if you can so that they march down the road correctly. Let me show you a sample I've made. This is a sample I made a year ago for another gentleman, and you can see if they get off to where the stitches between them as you get down here, it's, in my opinion, it's going to really be noticeable. So that's my goal, is to try to keep it that way. So I take my time and I establish my first row, and then here about every third time that I put the stitching iron in, then I will pull out my square and check it against the other side to make sure I'm in the right place. So I'm going to go ahead and finish making those around here, and then we'll be ready to add the dye to this. Okay, we've got the holes made. I think they look pretty well in line with each other, and spacing's pretty good on it. That's the front side. I'm almost afraid to look at the back, but let's flip it over and see how they look. That's all about keeping the chisel the same. Now they look pretty well spaced. That's good. Let's run this through some dye and we'll hang it up and let it dry. Well, that kind of rhymes, doesn't it? All right, so we've reached the next step here. I have already put 1 coat of oil on after the dye had dried, and I sealed it all with 1 coat of Resoling to allow me to stitch it without the threads getting stained by the dye that's in the holes. And now I'm doing the stitching, or completing the stitching. Now, I'm mentioning all of this, and one reason why I brought you back at this stage is I wanted to show you how those stitches look when you have the stitching holes aligned with one another. I think they look pretty good. As you can see, as we look at this, my stitches are in what I would call matched order. They're together on the path here. And you would think that if you just create one line and then you do the next one, they would line up from one end of the belt to the other, and they don't. So I have to tweak a little bit as I go. But I think it looks good. And if it started off matching and then got down here and it was off, I just don't think that would look right. So one nice thing about hand stitching and using the stitching chisels, it's easier, in my opinion, to keep them matched. If they were a brown thread on a brown belt, I really wouldn't worry about it so much. But when I've got a stitch like this light gray that really stands out and is dominant in what you're seeing, I think it would be a mistake not to have them matched. And if you remember, I showed you this sample that I had created. So here's a sample, and you saw part of it the other day, but this is a sample I made for a belt for a friend of mine that I did about 2 years ago, or when, I can't remember now exactly when it was. But the point of it is I wanted to show you something here. These stitches along here, you can see they run nice and straight. There's not an offset like this. This is a diamond chisel stitch, and this is a lacing chisel stitch. And the one thing that the lacing chisel stitch does for me is it allows me to get them closer together, or at least be comfortable doing that, than the diamond chisel. The diamond chisel holes are wider, and as a result of that, it takes up more space. So anyway, I'm probably kicking a dead horse here, but like I said, this is a sample I did. So I'm going to finish stitching this belt, and then we'll be ready to work on the edges, and I'll come back on that a little bit there. And if you have any questions on making this belt, let me know. I didn't go into a lot of detail on this. It's obviously similar to making a regular classic belt, except for I've got 2 rows of stitches on here, and didn't want to wear you out there. And I guess let me know, what do you think? You know, do you want more detail on this, or do you mind videos that are just of my projects in the shop? But right now I'm working on this. I worked on a crossbody bag, what I would call a Scottish style crossbody bag. And I don't know if you may have seen that. By the time I publish this video here, that video will have been out for a while. At this point, the stitching is completed, and I think you can see the line up between the stitches on each side, and even a little bit from left to right there. And I think it makes a much cleaner looking belt. That was the point I was trying to make. So now I need to do my edging. To do my round over, I'm going to use my Ron's number 3. And this size is the most used out of the 4 that I have. Probably behind that would be my number 2, and then the 1 and the 4. Next, I'm going to burnish my edge. Three ingredients: a little water, a little bit of friction, and just a piece of denim. Previously, I had applied Resoling to the face and the back of the belt, and now I am putting a second coat on there, but I'm focused a lot on these edges, because this will be the only time that I'm putting Resoling on the edge of the belt. So I'll put it on while I'm applying both sides here, and then again at the very end I'll apply it to the edge. And my experience is that really helps to seal so that you don't end up with dye rubbing off on clothes. Okay, now we're going to put the hardware on. So this has been a fun belt to make, a little different than belts I've made. I've made a couple similar. I made one that was like that sample I was showing you. And then I made another one that was all brown, but it had more space between this outer row. And I think I like the tighter pattern here better. Then I make a mark here where that set screw goes. The first time I installed one of these, I stripped out one side of this because it was too hard to compress the leather. I thought this little set screw would push in there, so I make a hole there now. And I don't know that this would back out, but I don't want them to. Let's put a little dab of clear fingernail polish on there. The nice thing about having a custom belt is you can have it custom size. So his belt calls for a 32 and a half. He needs to eat a few more hamburgers, I think. Wow, that's a nice looking belt. Dang, that is, I think, a nice looking belt. I don't have remorse over the Barter. I think it's good, but man, that's I think that's really a beautiful belt. I think it came out really nice, and I'm gonna go ahead and say I think it's okay. So this is going to Todd outside again. Yep, he was the winner of the belt. This is going to his son. His son has a firewood business, and we're trading. He's getting a good deal. We're trading a pickup load of firewood for this belt. So this belt will outlast that firewood for sure. I'll burn that up, and he'll still have a belt. I don't know, kind of a skinny guy. If he can stay inside this belt, he'll have his belt for a long time. I appreciate you being here in the shop with me today. Please like, share, and subscribe. More importantly, have a great day.